What's good, people? We're doing another AskFP like we always do. Jumping right into the question of the week. I only follow FP. I appreciate that for sure. He's back. Y'all might be looking at the days. See, this is 13 days ago. Last week, I had a whole bushel of them that I actually forgot. Some of them are a little outdated right now. But he says, who do you think had the match of the year? So he's talking about wrestling. I'm almost positive. For me, it was a lot of really good matches, but the best match of the year to me was WrestleMania. Seth Rollins. Well, it was Roman Reigns against Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship, but Seth Rollins came through with one of the best cash-ins of the Money in the Bank I've ever seen. The match was great because Lesnar was just destroying Reigns, was really putting over Lesnar, but Reigns came back and had his little moment, and then with Seth's cash-in, the match just had everything. It just had everything. King Mitch D says, do you think the Golden State Warriors will run out of gas in the playoffs? I don't think they'll run out of gas. I do think that chasing the 72-10 can be mentally draining. So if that's what you mean, I can understand how that would be. But I think that the team has a good amount of depth. So I don't know if running out of gas is going to be an issue. If they get beat, they're just going to get beat. But I don't think it's going to be an issue of running out of gas. Just, that's what I think. Moving on, we got Logan Mayhew. He says, do you think that the Cubs paid too much for Jason Hayward? I personally do. I can understand how you would say that, Logan. I don't think that's a preposterous statement at all. I mean, if you look at Jason Hayward's stats, he doesn't look like he should be one of the guys who's the highest paid players in the major leagues, which is pretty much what he is at this point, one of the highest. But here's the thing. I think that the Bulls, not the Bulls. I'm looking at the Bulls and the Raptors right now. I think that what the Cubs were doing is making a statement. Yes, do they need Jason Hayward for his outstanding defense, his versatility, his speed, his ability to get on base? Yes. But I think they were making a statement basically saying we are now a premier organization in the major leagues. And we're going to prove it by going out here and getting the top, a top position player, free agent available. And so I understand it. So I understand what you're saying. I understand your point, but that's what I think the Cubs are looking at. It's a twofold thing. Yes, he can help us on the field, and this is making a statement. Simen Torve Sundlan says, Freddie Adu was once looked at as one of the greatest footballing talents ever. Why did he slump into mediocrity? Whenever you're evaluating a child prodigy, somebody like a 14-year-old, which is what Freddie Adu was when he signed professionally, you really never know. You don't know. You're looking at the talent level that they have, and you're trying to project what you think they will become. But when it's a kid that's that young, you just really never know. Jennifer Capriati was like 14 or 15 when she turned pro, and it looked like she was going to be one of the all-time greats, and she did have her moments in tennis, but she never really fulfilled that potential that people thought. A lot of that was due to some outside, issues, and, God bless her. Hopefully she can get things together. But, you never know. Walter Davis says, which non-superstar do you think will debut at the Royal Rumble? I hope it's Finn Balor. I could definitely see that. I think that might drastically weaken the NXT stock, but you got all kinds of guys down there ready to do their thing. I'm actually thinking Sami Zayn could make an appearance at the Royal Rumble. I don't know, but I'm looking forward to it. Royal Rumble is my favorite pay-per-view of all, period. Not even close. Walter Davis says, what do you think the Pistons need to become an elite team in the Eastern Conference? For me, I think that the Pistons need shooting most of all. A stretch four would be like golden for them at this point. They also need some role, because stretch four would work really well with Andre Drummond. Also, they need some role players just to add some depth, a legit scoring threat on the second unit. Now, maybe that can be Brandon Jennings if he's willing to accept that role, but I think that those are the elements that are missing from their team, which I don't think that stuff's really difficult to grab. So we'll see if they can get it. Vaughn Resper Jr. says, what years would you consider as Jerry Rice's prime? Rice's prime, in my opinion, began in 1986. He was 24 years old. It was his second year in the league. Now, he was a rookie at 23. Imagine if he was like a rookie at like 21, like a lot of guys. All right, so that was his second year in the league. He led the league in receiving yards, touchdowns, and yards per game that year. It was the first of 6 times that he led the league in all of those categories. He'd actually lead the league twice in receptions. His prime, to me, would be from 1986 to 1996. 96 is the last year that he led the league in a major statistical category. That he led the league in receptions that year. I think he had 108. So to me, his prime would go for 10 years. Now, he was still really good all the way up to like 2003. So 7 years after his prime, he was still really good. But those weren't his absolute killer years. Brady Babin says, will Godson 80, which is Jarvis Landry, ever become an elite receiver? I think he's close already. I do. I just think the Dolphins aren't that good. But I think he's really close. I think he's probably a top 12, 14 receiver right now. I mean, his quarterback still has some development to do, and they need offensive line help terribly. So you're not going to see the offense actually do their thing until, all of the parts are there. But I think he's already a really good receiver. Brady Babin also says, will Jeremy Hill bounce back from this season? He had a good rookie year, but he has been so inconsistent this year. It's difficult to say with running backs, and Cincinnati's so deep at the position. But I look at a guy like Doug Martin. Doug Martin, it was obviously about injuries last season, but he looked like last year like he was set to be one of those guys that we threw into like he was Natron Means or something. Like he was just like a something close to a one-hit wonder. But look at him this year, all the way back as one of the elite running backs. So I can definitely see it happening for Jeremy Hill. Maybe it doesn't happen in Cincinnati, but I can see it happening. TyBudd says, Jon Jones 2.0. Do you think the extra muscle is a mistake? Do you think it will negatively affect his stamina? I don't. I think Jon Jones is weird to say this because you talk about somebody with a drug problem, or who has had a drug problem. But I think Jon Jones is a freak when it comes to health and making sure that he is in fighting condition. So I don't think that he will do anything that's going to physically hinder his ability to perform in the octagon. I also think that the extra weight is a precursor to a move to the heavyweight division. So that's something that I think is going to happen. I think that he's going to be moving to the heavyweight division sooner rather than later. Jarrod Young says, is Serge Ibaka underrated? I don't think he's underrated. I think that he gets credit for what he is, and he is a good rebounder, excellent shot blocker, excellent defender, period. And I think that he gets credit for that. And I think that's about where he is. He's not a special guy in terms of somebody who is able to, score off the dribble. He's a good shooter. He's even extended his range out to three-point range a bit, but I don't think that he does any of those things offensively at a level that would make him pretty much more than a role player, to be honest. I mean, not just because I say you're a role player doesn't mean you're bad or you're not valuable to your team. That's actually much to the contrary, but he's not a star, so I think he gets credit for what he is. Jarrod Young says, who do you think would be the favorite if there was a Holm and Rousey rematch? Well, there absolutely, positively is going to be a rematch. And I would think, I'm going to say, I think Holly Holm's going to be the favorite. It would be different if it was a one-punch knockout, something like McGregor-Aldo, even though I don't think Aldo would be the favorite against McGregor in a rematch. But if it would be different if it was something like that. If there was a one-punch knockout from, Holly Holm just came out, pow, just out of nowhere. But Holly Holm's victory was a one-sided beatdown that lasted around, over a round. So it just looked like she was better. So because of that, I think she'll be the favorite. Sharuk Rahat says, how important is it to have an elite center power forward in the league, and what does it do for a team? I don't think that positions matter as much as people think they do. I think you need elite players at whatever position they are. So you build around whatever you build around, and of course it needs to match whatever system you're running offensively and defensively, but primarily offensively. But so I think that an elite center and an elite power forward, what that traditionally does is, if they play traditional style of game with a back to the basket game, I think it allows you to play from inside out, which is a higher percentage way to play, and it opens up the shots on the perimeter as long as you have a big that's willing to pass the ball. And if they're also good defensively, then it automatically boosts your interior defense. So those are the things that I think that it adds. But like I said, you don't have to have a specific position to be a good team. Sharuk Rahat also says, if you're a GM and you have the first pick in the NFL draft, who are you picking? Well, the NFL is different than the NBA, because in the NBA, for the most part, if it's an elite player, no matter what position he plays, you probably take him. No matter what position he plays, you figure it out later. The NFL is not really so much like that. If you have a franchise quarterback, if the best player in the draft is a quarterback, you're not going to take him. So if I needed a quarterback, it would be Memphis's Paxton Lynch. If I needed an offensive lineman, which is another position that might go number one, would be Ronnie Stanley from Notre Dame. And if I needed a defensive end or a defensive impact player, period, it would be Joey Bosa from Ohio State. Now, TyBudd says, I've yet to hear your thoughts on Thon Maker. This dude looks like a better KD than KD. What do you think about this guy? Well, I can understand the KD comparison. I've actually made it myself watching him. But watching his highlights and watching him actually play is something that's a little bit different. I've noticed something with him playing. His transition from dribble to shot is much slower than KD's, and I wonder about his ability to get that shot off at a higher level of basketball. We're going to really see the big difference when he starts to play college basketball. He's also got to get physically stronger. He's very thin and very weak in his base. So at this point now, I think he has to play a 3 or a 4. But, he's very young. We'll see how much strength he can gain. But he is absolutely an intriguing talent. One of the, as far as his ceiling, nobody's ceiling is probably higher because of his height and his athleticism. So we'll see. Jarrod Young says he's 7 feet tall, in case you guys didn't know. Plays like small forward, power forward. Jarrod Young says, is Stephen Curry the greatest shooter in NBA history? Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Same to you, Mr. Young. Absolutely, Steph is the best shooter I've ever seen. All things considered, free throw shooting, spot-up shooting, shooting off the dribble, shooting threes, shooting from all over the floor, in the paint, everywhere on the floor. There has never been anybody that shot the ball the way Steph does. Nobody. Jarrod Young says, who has been the biggest disappointment in this year's NBA draft and 2014's draft class? Well, we're only like 30 games or so into the season. It's much too early to call somebody a disappointment. Way too early. So I don't even have an answer for you for the 2015 draft. And it's actually kind of early to even be saying this on the 2014 draft. But if I had to pick out 2 guys who kind of has to have their teams and their fan bases a little bit nervous, I would say it's Joel Embiid and Dante Exum. Those 2 guys got to be a little bit nervous. Simen Torve Sundlan has an interesting question. He says the best pure offensive and defensive linemen of all time try to exclude two-way players like Gary Payton. So what he's talking about is a starting 5 of guys who are just straight offensive players, didn't play much defense, and a starting 5 was just straight defensive stoppers and didn't have much offensive. So in terms of the offense, I'd have Steve Nash at point, James Harden at the shooting guard, Kiki Vandeweghe at small forward, look him up if you don't know about him, Dirk Nowitzki at power forward, and Rick Smits in the middle. The Duncan Dutchman did not play a lot of defense, but he could score. It wasn't even a good rebound. He was 7'4". But, yeah. As far as defense, Brevin Knight. How many of y'all remember Brevin Knight? He was a defensive demon, one of the tops in steals all the time. He couldn't shoot a skittle in the ocean. Shooting guard would have been Tony Allen. Y'all know about him. Small forward, Bruce Bowen for sure. Power forward would be Dennis Rodman. And in the middle, Ben Wallace. That would be my all-defensive team. Will Be Free says, who are currently the best role players in the NBA? Best role players in the NBA right now, 3 guys come to mind immediately, which is Kyle Korver, obviously for obvious reasons. He don't do much. He doesn't do anything well except for shoot threes. He gives great effort, but he doesn't do anything else well. DeAndre Jordan, for sure. DeAndre Jordan is a rebounder, defender. That is it. He does nothing else well. Converts around the basket to dunking and everything, but it doesn't do anything else well. But he is outstanding at what he does. And another one you might kind of sleep on. Jarrod Dudley is nothing but a spot-up shooter. That's what he does. He plays pretty decent defense, but he is a three-point shooter, and he is one of the best in the league. He doesn't get a lot of credit, but he is. Jarrod Young has a really interesting question, something that I hadn't thought about. During the Golden State-Cleveland game, Mark Jackson said that Steph Curry is hurting the game. So Jarrod says, is Curry hurting the game? I don't think he's hurting the game, but I do totally understand what Mark Jackson's point. And a lot of people jumped right on the fact of the concept of what he said. He's hurting the game. He didn't mean like he was bad for the game. What he was saying is kids watch Steph Curry and they go and they want to immediately, everybody wants to shoot threes. That's all they want to do. And they're not understanding that Steph Curry is truly gifted as a shooter. And you're not 9 times out of 10 going to be gifted like Curry. So you cannot afford to shoot the ball as frequently from outside as he does. You need to hone the other parts of your game so that you can be a complete player. You cannot try to emulate a player who is as gifted as him in style because you're not going to be him. So I totally get what he's saying. Jovan Radovanović says, do you think that Nikola Jokic has all-star potential? I really do. I mean, he's 20 years old, super long, range from the outside, can put the ball on the floor a little bit, but he's only 20, so you're going to have to give him a little bit of time. But Denver has a nice amount of young, intriguing guys for, value level contracts. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the next 2-3 years. Jarrod Young says, what are your thoughts on Kobe likely making the All-Star game? Is it good or is it wrong? I think it's okay. We've seen this in the past. Michael Jordan making the All-Star game, even though he had a better season than Kobe's having now. Magic Johnson being called back in and playing the All-Star game. So we've seen these lifetime achievement award type of an All-Star game bursts, and it's the All-Star game. So I don't think it's that big of a deal at all. So I wouldn't go crazy over it. Jarrod Young has another good question. He says the NBA all-time best shooter in each position. So best shooting point guard, shooting guards, etc. I already answered the point about the point guard. Steph is easily that guy. The best shooting guard to me is Ray Allen. So you get some Reggie Millers, obviously, and that kind of thing. But overall, Ray Allen to me was the best shooting guard. The best shooting small forward, I'd have to go with Larry Bird. Now, there's obviously some great guys out there, but if you look at Larry, 90% free throw shooter and 40% three-point range, I mean, just crazy. Best shooting power forward, I'd have to go with Dirk Nowitzki. All over the floor, fadeaways, threes, in the lane, whatever. The best shooting center is interesting, though. I'd have to narrow it down to like 3 guys. Bill Laimbeer, very good free throw shooter and a pretty good three-point shooter even before the three-point shot became in vogue. Channing Frye. Channing Frye's like an 80-some% free throw shooter and a 39% three-point shooter in his career. But he doesn't always play center. Mehmet Okur is in the same level, and so is Andrea Bargnani. But none of those guys play center all the time, with the exception of Bill Laimbeer, and that's why I would give it to Bill Laimbeer. If those other guys play center all the time like Laimbeer did, then I'd probably say Channing Frye. But because Laimbeer's all-time center, I'd give to him. Jovan Radovanović says, who is the greatest NBA coach of all time? There's been a lot of great coaches. Pat Riley, Chuck Daly is way up there on the list. Phil Jackson's up on the list, even though I do consider Phil Jackson to be a little bit overrated, because I'd like to see the one season that he won a championship without arguably the 2 best players in the NBA on his team. Think about that. So my pick would be Greg Popovich. I think Popovich is the best coach. If you look at how long he's won, yes, he's always had Tim Duncan, but everything else around Tim Duncan has changed, and even his winning has lasted longer than Tim Duncan's prime. So I think that's the reason why. Jovan Radovanović says also, do Tony Kukoc and Vlade Divac deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? On play alone, no. No, they wouldn't. But sometimes guys go into Hall of Fame based off of what they've done internationally or based off what they've meant to the game. And I think if you look at it from that standpoint of what they've meant to the game, I could see them going in. Sharunas Marciulionis is in. I believe Arvydas Sabonis is in. Yao Ming should go in for that same purpose, in my opinion. So if you go in based on that, I do think that they should go. The last question is also from Jovan Radovanović. He says, do you think that a healthy Bulls squad can beat the Cavs in 7 games? Now, this is going to sound like I'm being a homer or something, but I do think it's possible. It's not possible with them playing the way they're playing right now, even though Rose is definitely showing some flashes of coming out of his situation. But they got to step it up at their best, possibly. But as they are right now, no. God bless you. Peace.